And we are back. Hello again, everyone. This is After the Beat. It is Thursday, November 16th. There is a ton of things going on in the MMA world. Hopefully, you have asked us some questions about things we did not discuss, because it would be kind of boring if we rehash the same old topics. So without further ado, let's go to question number one. This is from our own Guilherme Cruz, the Brazilian beast himself, who asks, which beater would win in a boomerang war? So this is...
Is this a question about gay pornography?
Yeah. I'm going with Mendenhall.
Yeah?
Because he's not here. He's practicing. We're sitting here working, and he's off like throwing the boomerang around.
Okay, can I just
That is
play
the
off this?
funniest
So
thing.
yesterday, in case you missed it, Fabricio Werdum and Colby Covington in Sydney, where Werdum is headlining a card this Saturday against Marcin Tybura, get into a war of words, so to speak. Of course, Covington has said some things about Brazil, and according to footage that was posted by Dan Hooker, Werdum hit him in the face with a boomerang. I mean, this is straight out of pro wrestling.
This is the funniest thing I think I've ever seen.
With a boomerang. And now there's...
In a bag, no less. Here's my fucking boomerang.
And now there's a report, we reported at MMA Fighting Mark Ramundi, that Covington is going to press charges. He's got a mark on his face. He went on his Instagram Live. He started to verbally attack Werdum, and wouldn't you know it, another homosexual slur.
Yes.
The same one.
Well, that's where the boomerang comes in handy. By having that kind of comical part of it, they kind of cover up the one more slur that's being thrown out there. It's just one more bad incident. I mean, even without the slur, it was such a stupid thing. And the idea that he's going to press charges.
It was a funny thing.
This is a guy who's out there trolling everybody and acting like Mr. Tough Guy, and then he gets, when Werdum gets in his face, all he's doing is backing up. He gets hit with a boomerang. He's going to press charges. I mean, if he's running some kind of scam, like some kind of WWE, heel game, he just completely ruined it.
See, I totally disagree. Nobody seems to understand what Colby Covington is.
Yes.
Okay, he's a provocateur.
Yes.
That is what he is. Okay, so there's two ways to judge a provocateur. One is how good is their shtick, right? So to an extent, not in the same way, but to an extent, Conor McGregor's a provocateur, especially in that, let's say, think of him on that Jose Aldo tour. But the difference is he was masterful at it. However, the second way to judge a provocateur is, do they provoke people? Yes. So here's, for example, you got Werdum being provoked. That just adds attention to Colby Covington. John Jones tweeting, good job, Fabricio Werdum, because remember Colby was like, they were not going back and forth on Twitter, but sort of like that way. And so now he's lashing out. It's like, do you understand that all of you are turning him into a despicable character? And by turning him into a despicable character, you turn him into somebody who people want to see get beat up, which means you're putting money in his pocket.
So it's working.
It is working perfectly. Everyone wants to judge his game because it's not as good as Sonin's or McGregor's. And you're right, it's not. It's a cheap imitation of those. It's like a lowbrow version of those. However, it's working because every fighter just keeps walking on into the trap.
It's a lower brow. I mean, they were lowbrow to begin with, and he's taking it.
Fair enough.
He's like, it's like a bad poet, It's somebody who just.
Yeah, but if it's so bad, you would just ignore it. Everybody.
I want to ignore it, and that's what I can't.
He's a troll.
It's Colby Covington we're talking about here, who's gotten everyone riled up. I mean, like the freaking headliner of Saturday's card is going up to him and hitting him with a boomerang. I mean, he has no business even thinking of Colby Covington at this juncture.
And he's got Kamaru Usman calling him out too. Now that's partly from bigger issues, but my point being is if you guys all think this low of Colby Covington, then ignore him. Ignore him, because that will deprive him of the oxygen he needs. Otherwise, he is going to keep doing this until it makes him more money.
Okay, so pause your thoughts on Colby Covington, because I do believe our next question is about him as well. So let's continue. Actually, no.
Definitely not.
No, it's not. Okay. I don't think that I had that question second, but fine. I think we're going to talk about Covington later. Okay, for now, between Arlovsky, Matt Brown, and Diego Sanchez, who would you like to see retire now? So Arlovsky had the win over Baby Albini and his interesting...
What was that?
Fight night attire. Matt Brown beat Diego Sanchez with the elbow from hell, like the machete. And of course, Diego Sanchez lost. Brown was the one who said he was going to retire and then kind of took it back. Diego hasn't talked about retirement, but I think we all kind of feel a little weird about all the damage he's taken. And Arlovsky said after his win over Albini that had I lost, I probably was going to retire 5 losses in a row. That would have been 6, but now I'm going to stick around. Could we make a case for all 3 of them should be retiring right now?
Sure could.
Is that what you would vote for?
You know, all these ones are like, well, could you eke out one more? Maybe I could, you can think of a scenario where like, well, if you got that guy on that day in that city, all right, whatever. But yeah, more or less, I mean, Matt Brown, if that's, I mean, I said it too, look like a samurai just cutting a guy in half. If that's his going out party, they're not going to get better than that. Diego, you're not, everyone has such affection for Diego, me included,
Right.
but I mean, Jesus Christ, he is not a welterweight, and that was an ugly
Size
loss.
difference.
It was like, it reminded me of Johnny Hendricks at middleweight. It's like, I'm glad you're not weight cutting, that ain't the weight class for you. And you're right, Arlovsky, I mean, he looked, it reminded me of like Rashad in Mexico had Rashad 1 or something, where you got by on this like card kind of in the middle of not nowhere, but not some big major Las Vegas or New York card.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the end is nigh for all 3.
Yeah, I can see all 3, but I mean, the Matt Brown one, what a poetic way to go out. If the last blow that you land on an opponent is that elbow, which was one of the 3 most memorable knockouts that I ever saw in this sport, that would be pretty spectacular. I mean, I know it's hard to leave after that, but imagine you just like drop the mic and walk out the door.
The kids are in the cage.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful thing. I almost wish that he had done it that night. I mean, look, these guys always can come back later on and change their mind. I sort of wish he had just taken his gloves off, left them in the center, and just like walked out. As far as Diego, it's really more of a preserving the guy. I mean, I really feel as though he is one of those guys. I mean, it's almost like like when Chuck Liddell was staying around a little too long. I mean, to some extent, I feel the same about Rashad. You mentioned him.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these guys just look like they just haven't. They're not really at that point where they can compete at this level anymore, and they're getting brutally knocked out. And Diego that's happened to him. He didn't get knocked out at all for the first how many years of his career.
He's taken a lot of shots.
And the last few years, it has been just one after another, and it's just
3 of his last 4, right?
It's pretty nasty. So, I didn't have as much of a feeling. Arlovsky, maybe he can open a daycare center and do a better job of diapering people than whatever happened that night.
The problem is that everyone waits to be stretchered out, right? Like, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm going to get the win and then I'm going to say goodbye. Arlovsky's like, nah, I won, now I'm back and I'm going to keep fighting. And, Brown, I feel like has second thoughts because, he looked good. And yes, he was talking about it going into the fight as well, but that was like the strangest retirement fight of all time because he announced his retirement and then just a couple of weeks later, he's like, you know what, I'm going to take it back. Yeah. And so you feel uncomfortable. Larry Merchant once said, all fighters except for maybe like Lennox Lewis and George St. Pierre, he didn't mention George St. Pierre, but he did mention Lennox Lewis, they leave the fight game on their back. And it's impossible. Like Chris Lytle did it well. He had that moment with Dan Hardy and never came back, even though he kind of considered it once or twice. And it's weird that they seem to be always waiting for like the worst possible situation to occur, and then they're like, okay, now I'm done.
Floyd Mayweather. I mean, look at this guy. He walked out with his biggest payday and probably his biggest and easiest payday combined. I mean, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
Ben Askren.
I know, dude. People hate Floyd, and it's like, goddamn, Floyd is like the best at this. Not merely boxing, but like managing his career.
Yeah.
He was so smooth with it, even though he is, a detestable creature.
Okay, let's move along to the next one. What else we got here? All right, any updates on the UFC and TV negotiations? Is Amazon in the running? So there's no real update here, but Amazon is in the running, and I want to know how you guys feel about Amazon being a UFC or MMA broadcaster. Are you a big fan of Amazon Prime?
Go ahead.
Yeah?
I like Amazon Prime. I watch shows.
Are you a Prime member?
I am.
And are you?
I am.
Me too. Okay.
Yeah, so I watch stuff on there. I don't watch as much on that as I would like on Netflix or something. But every once in a while there's some series or something that I'm interested in watching. I don't know. I mean, everything it's a whole new paradigm. All the broadcast stuff is it's all anything that we thought we knew about this stuff is kind of out the window, and everything has changed. I mean, even like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Right now, the only way you can watch this is to be on Twitter. Who would have even thought of that as a possibility? A year ago. Yeah, Amazon is one of the players, and the UFC should certainly get them involved.
Does it feel like a step down to be on Amazon, going from Fox to Amazon?
No,
even if the money is better.
FS1.
Not necessarily. Yeah. I mean, look, man, we've talked about in the show ad nauseum. cord cutting is only escalating.
Yeah.
It's only escalating. There was Derek Thompson, again, from The Atlantic today, was tweeting that for like the 5th year in a row, there has been a decline in overall pay TV subscriptions, and advertising has stayed relatively normal only because of ad rates have gone up, but like this is not a sustainable, I mean, as one goes like this, one's going like this, eventually that one's going to go down too. Pay TV is kind of in trouble, and so, not imminently, but visibly. And so I get the need to want to really think outside the box. UFC's always been really good about that. In that sense, you really appreciate this. But the one thing I don't get, I did some talking to some folks when I was in New York, and I got the sense that like, I was like, why aren't they doubling down on Fight Pass? You know, you have WWE Network. That's been a real big boon for them, especially if they had trouble with pay-per-view. And I didn't get the sense that that was like a big priority for the UFC, the next TV deal. And I find that very surprising. This is a company that was built on vertical integration, controlling everything. Everything is in-house. We make money here. We control here. Everything. And it looks like they just want to keep Fight Pass more or less what it is, which is fine, but unremarkable ultimately in the end. And I find that surprising.
Yeah, Amazon would feel like a conflict.
Total conflict.
With
you would want to
Fight
give that
Pass,
inventory
right?
to Fight Pass, you would think. But I guess not. I don't know.
All right, we'll see how that plays out. No update yet, and of course, or no real, news there. But the deal is up in a year and change, so we'll see how it all plays out. Discuss how annoying it was to hear Thug Rose yelled 28 times by Daniel Cormier. So let me just expand a bit here. Some people don't like Cormier on the mic. Some people really like him. Some people don't like the three-man booth, so to speak. Some people like it. How do we feel about Cormier? Let's now that he's had a few times, doing the pay-per-views.
Yep.
Brian Stann is no longer in the mix. How do you feel about Cormier?
Well, Paul Felder, by the way, deserves a shout-out. He did an excellent job at UFC Norfolk, so let's just say that. I like Daniel Cormier on the mic. I like him a lot for a lot of reasons. One, I think his analysis is stupendous. He always seems like if he had never been an athlete, he could have been like a mall Santa because he's just so jolly all the time. He giggles a lot. But I think if you wanted to make one criticism of him, and everyone's got strengths and weaknesses, this is not me picking on Daniel, but if we're just observing him, he's a little bit undisciplined. He giggles a little too much. He does that Thug Rose mantra over and over. He can tighten his broadcast work. But I think if he did that, I think he's already good. I think that would take him from good to great.
I mean, going back over the years, watching broadcasts of other sports, think about some of the characters who stand out. I mean, I think about watching football games, and back in the day it was, Pat Summerall and John Madden. John Madden, now people think of him, he's just the guy that's named after a video game or something, but he actually was a really, I think Cormier is a little bit in that mold of a John Madden, a guy who knew the sport inside and out, was one of the greatest coaches of his time, but didn't act like he knew the sport that way. He just kind of, was freewheeling. I mean, I think you could, to some extent, on the studio shows, Terry Bradshaw's a little bit like that. These guys who have a lot of personality, and they're not dropping in, they're not nerds dropping in facts and figures and all this stuff, technical stuff, as much as that you have to almost read between the line to get that kind of stuff. And I feel like Daniel's a little bit like that. I thought that the Thug Rose thing was just, of course I didn't hear it live because I was at the arena watching, but when I heard it later on, I thought it was brilliant. And of course, now I don't know the guy's name, and maybe you guys know, but the guy who did the animation, where shows the three of them, and Rogan's like his eyes popping out. I mean, I thought that was just brilliant, and it kind of showed a little bit about the personality of all three of them. You had the very excitable, the very excitable Joe Rogan, and the kind of like celebratory, Daniel Cormier. So I feel as though if you're going to have a three-man booth, you don't want to have another guy who's kind of going to talk, terminology or talk technical stuff. You want to have a guy who's going to have a little bit of personality in there, and I think he fills that bill well.
These broadcasts are very long. It's fun to have someone who's having fun, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
totally.
personality, doesn't take it too seriously. And, I mean, it's one thing to have, Dennis Miller in there. It's another to have a guy who's not taking it seriously and also is that brilliant of a mind when it comes to combat sports. The UFC has been blessed, and I don't know, I mean, surely they recognize this. I know John Anik does. They have been blessed with a plethora of great broadcast analysts and people who don't have an experience. Like Paul Felder just gets dropped in there, and he's great. They've got Cormier now. They've got Cruz. Of course, they had Brian Stann. He left. Rogan is the standard bearer, if you will. He's been doing it for so long. They've got Paul Felder. They had Kenny Florian for the longest time. But
Eve Edwards for a time.
Eve Edwards. So right now, who's the best? Who's the best analyst in the game?
Just fighters?
Nah, just color analyst. Who's number one?
Probably, for me,
Yeah.
it was Brian Stann.
Okay.
I don't know how you
But
feel.
active. right now?
I would go Cruz.
Okay.
Cruz is a little bit more my speed, but
Even though he's a little dry compared
right. So
to
there's a criticism of him. He doesn't have that same liveliness that Daniel does. So it's a bit of a trade-off there. But I do think in terms of what I'm looking for in a broadcast, he really just is so insightful. His one criticism is he just goes too long. You got to tighten him up.
Okay.
But I like Cruz.
My thing with Cruz is I love Cruz. I think Cruz was the best guy on the desk. You know, the guy who's doing that desk analysis. I love listening to him. He could just take apart a fight in those like post-game shows. He was the guy that could just take it apart like nobody else could. I think that cage side, I get some of that, but I feel like it kind of diminishes him in a little bit of a way. I think that when he gets those few moments to step back and be at the desk, I think he is at his best. I mean, I thought it was great when they had Stan at cage side and him on the desk, and when those few times when they swapped, I didn't think Brian was as good at the desk, and I didn't think that Dominic was as good at the cage side. So I'm not really sure the best guy. I mean, I'm going to say Cormier. I like the personality when you have another guy with him. The three-man booth, I think Cormier is brilliant.
Lest we forget Dan Hardy, who I think is a
to say Dan Hardy. And what I like was they were initially not putting Hardy or Gooden on American broadcast. That has changed. Yes. And they always just used them together. Yeah. Now you're seeing them separated. Yeah. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, actually, I would say that if you don't have a three-man booth, I'd put Hardy in there ahead of Daniel.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. All right, let's move along to our next one. What do we got? Who should Jimmie Rivera fight next? So he was supposed to fight Dominic Cruz.
Yeah.
And Dominic Cruz has a broken arm.
Yep.
Marlon Moraes gets on the mic, passionately pleading for the fight, wants to fight. Aljamain Sterling wants to fight as well. Do you go with either of those, or is there another? I have another. Can I throw the other one out?
Sure.
I think that the one from a meritocracy and from a ranking standpoint should be Rafael Sunsao.
Yeah.
I think it's the least sexiest of the fights in terms of like,
Certainly is.
the personalities coming together. Sunsao with a big win. 10 of 11, only lost to TJ. Rivera's won 20 in a row.
And just starched Matthew Lopez.
So I feel like that's the fight, but is that the sexiest of the fights? Is that the one that you guys go? What do you got?
I think when you have Jimmie Rivera in a fight, it's not going to be a sexy fight, regardless of who you have on the other side of the octagon, unless it's unless it's like a McGregor type guy who's going to just do all the promoting ahead of time. So I would just go with the best fight. So I mean, I actually like I hadn't thought of a Sunsao, but I think that's a really good move. Okay. I would go with that.
Sunsao, you're right. Meritocratically, that's the one to go. But if that's not the direction they go, I would like to see the Aljamain Sterling fight.
Okay, not Moraes.
Not Moraes, because I believe that they might be a bit of a style contrast, which could create better action. And also, I just like the personality clash there as well. Plus, all guys from the same area, more or less.
That's the other thing. I mean, both of them, Moraes and Aljamain Sterling, both have some kind of personality thing with him. Yeah. So that does add some fuel to it. It's not a sexy fight, but it does add a little bit of something to it.
All of them are good choices.
Rivera is on such a great streak, but I feel like he needs like that one moment, right? Like that big knockout or that big finish or that fight that gets people excited about him as he tries to get a title shot.
That's why I think the Sunsao fight serves him the best, because that's
But Sunsao has a history of making fighters look not that great.
But he's also has a history of being a really great fighter, whereas I don't think you could say the same for Moraes or Sterling in terms of the name value or people saying, well, this is like one of our top guys. They're certainly both guys are the top 10 guys, but I think that if you beat a Sunsao, you have earned your spot.
Okay. All right, what else we got? Next question. Okay, this is the one that I was alluding to earlier. How do you feel about Colby pressing charges? Does that now make him the male version of Angela Magana? And so let me ask you, is there another Colby question, by the way? There might be one other one. But okay, let me ask you about the pressing charges. We spoke about this earlier, but has Colby officially crossed the line? Because now people are saying, to me, when he talked about Brazil, I was like, well, look, he was just doing shtick at that point. But now he continues to say, Brazilian filthy animals, and he keeps going back to that. And of course, the slur and I get what you're saying. Trust me, there's no one who advocates more for that sort of thing than myself. But is he dangerous? Is he getting a little attention now and doesn't know what to do with it? That's what I'm afraid of here. He's maybe going a little too close and perhaps over the line to the point where he's turning people off. It's okay to piss them off, but if now you're becoming there's a difference between riling people up and being actually racist and being homophobic, right? That's not the kind of heat that you want.
I don't know what would mean heat.
Yes.
You mean pro wrestling heat?
No, the heat. People wanting to see you get beat up.
The original question we had about Colby was, should the UFC censor this?
Yeah.
And my answer to that is no. I don't think the UFC, well, at least not yet. I mean, the gay slur stuff is just like, I don't know what to do about this because
This is
apparently
an epidemic.
I mean, apparently these guys cannot converse in the English language or Spanish language without throwing it in there. I mean, it's like literally the most important word to them, apparently. I don't understand that. But, okay, that notwithstanding, the question is, should the UFC have censored that? And up to this point, the answer is basically no, that one issue aside. There's a different question about what individual fighters want to do about it. There's an individual question of like, did he cross the line? Again, for the UFC censorship, no. But did he cross the line in terms of like pissing people off? Intentionally. He is an intentional line crosser.
Okay.
That's what he does. This is my point. Everyone's like, oh, you got another question?
Well, no, so this is the question that I was referring to. So where is the line with Colby Covington and his antics? While it comes off as too pro wrestling-y for some, it's also seen as racist and over the line for others. So this is playing off what you're just talking about.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a question of like, again, do I endorse any of the truth value of this? No. If you wish to have Colby Covington not be an issue, deprive him of oxygen, not literally, but figuratively.
Yeah. And
this will go away. But the problem is everyone just seems to think that if they punch him in the face or chuck a boomerang at him or send a tweet about it congratulating, him being punched in the face, that this will somehow minimize him. No, it will not. It will magnify him. It will turn him into a contemptible character, which he can then in turn use to cash in. Everyone is doing it wrong around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just kind of depressed about the whole Covington story because he has been a detestable character in terms of what he's said about people and country, about the country of Brazil and just people in general, and also using, slur. But what makes me really depressed about it is that this guy should be this, this character we hold up and kind of ridicule, but he's barely worse than so many other people in the sport. And that's kind of the depressing thing, that his antics barely stick out. They stick out a little bit because he takes it a little farther than everybody else. But this idea that who this week is gonna drop the slur. Well, next week, who do you think it's going to be, Luke? Next week we're gonna have another slur. Who are you betting on? That's the kind of thing that kind of depresses me.
I hear that Werdum hits him in the head with a boomerang. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I have to see this video. And then you're watching it, and then you hear the word, and you're like, come on.
Dude, they just can't. They can't.
What's wrong with you guys?
They cannot converse without.
Can you imagine what their conversations are like on a day-to-day basis? I mean, it must be a mess.
If the next time the UFC has an athletes summit in Vegas and brings all their athletes together, and they don't spend an entire day
forget the next time. They need to call an impromptu one.
They need to bring all these guys together and have an entire day spent educating, because
every fight card from now till July, when the fighters check in, so that might cover the entire roster. You need to sit them down and tell them what words are appropriate to say in public.
It's not
especially when you're on camera, especially when you're filming the damn thing yourself.
But that's still a punitive part of it. I'm not even thinking about the punitive side of it, finding people or giving them rules. I think you got to educate them. You got to you got to bring in some LGBT, whatever. I'm just going to say all the letters. You got to bring in some people who can actually. I know I messed that up badly. That was probably a slur right there. You got to educate people, bring people in there who know what this feels like, and have someone sit down and talk to these guys and say, I'm a gay person. This is what it feels like when I hear this. Yeah. I'm a person from Brazil. This is what it feels like when someone says it about my country. Not like, we're going to fine you, we're going to suspend you, we're going to do this. That stuff isn't, you got to educate.
All right. I think we're done, right? No more questions? Yep, we are done. Great questions this week. Good stuff. Covered some of the other hot topics.
All right.
All right, fine. I mean, there's a lot going on.
They were good.
Some depressing stuff, as you said, Jeff. I mean,
I'd rather not messed up the whole,
I'd rather not talk about,
the acronym.
Homosexual slurs anymore on this program. But
we're going to talk about it next week, because we're going to say whoever did it between today and next Thursday, we're going to have that discussion.
There are some sensitive little butterflies in the comment section that get real offended about it. That's why I enjoy talking about it.
Okay, all right.
I like to Colby Covington them just to.
All right, well, I'll leave that to you. I don't like talking about it, and hopefully it ends, but as Jeff alluded to, it
won't.
At least it's not trending in that direction. All right, we are done. Thank you so much for watching. By the way, quick programming note. We're back next Wednesday. We're not on Thursday because it's Thanksgiving here in the United States, so we'll have a special Wednesday show, same time and place, 1 p.m. Eastern time, right here on MMA Fighting, also on our Twitter page as well. So please do make note of that. We have a Wednesday afternoon show for you next week only, and then it's back to Thursdays for us. All right, we're done. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We've got Bellator tomorrow. Actually, it's happening tonight, but it's tomorrow on Spike TV from Israel, and then, of course, the UFC in Sydney with the Fabricio Werdum versus Marcin Tybura fight. For Luke, Jeff, I'm Mario. For the rest of the crew, again, thanks so much for watching. Enjoy your weekend.